The calendar, How Luisa Received the Gift, from the Book of Heaven Volume 1, by Luisa Piccarreta. Part 14. One morning, it was the eve of the Nativity of Mary Most Holy, my always benign Jesus himself came to dispose me. He did nothing but come and go continuously. He would speak to me now about faith, and then he would leave me, and I would feel a life of faith being infused in my soul. As rough as I felt it before, at the speaking of Jesus, I would feel my soul become very light, in such a way as to penetrate into God, and I would contemplate now his power, now his sanctity, now his goodness, and so on. My soul would remain stupefied, and in a sea of stupefaction, I would say, "Powerful God, what power is not undone before you? Immense sanctity of God, what other sanctity, as sublime as it might be, would dare to appear before you?" Then I would feel myself descend into myself, and I could see my nothingness, the nonentity of earthly things, how everything is nothing before God. I would see myself as a little worm, all full of dust, climbing up in order to take a few steps. It would take nothing to destroy me but someone who would trample me underfoot, and I would be undone. So, seeing myself so ugly, I almost would not dare to go to God, but his goodness would make itself present before my mind, and I would feel drawn as though by a magnet, to go to him. And I would say to myself, if he is holy, he is also merciful, if he is powerful, he also contains full and highest goodness within himself. It seemed to me that goodness surrounded him on the outside and inundated him from within. So I would contemplate the goodness of God. It seemed to me that it would surpass all of the other attributes, but then, looking at the others, I would see them all equal among themselves, immense, immeasurable and incomprehensible to the human nature. While my soul would be in this state, Jesus would come back and speak about hope. I remember something confusedly, because after so much time it is impossible to remember clearly, but in order to do the obedience that wants it so, I will say what I can. So, going back to faith, Jesus would say, in order to obtain, one must believe. Just as for the head without the sight of the eyes, everything is darkness, everything is confusion, so much so, that if one wanted to walk, he would stumble now at one point, now at another, and would end up falling completely. The same for the soul without faith, she does nothing but go from precipice to precipice. But faith serves as the sight of the soul, and as the light which guides her to eternal life. Now, what is this light of faith nourished by? By hope. Now, what is the substance of this light of faith, and of this nourishment of hope? It is charity. All of these three virtues are grafted to one another, in such a way that one cannot be without the other. In fact, what good comes to man from believing in the immense riches of faith, if he does not hope for them, for himself? He will look at them, yes, but with indifferent eye, because he knows that they do not belong to him. But hope provides the light of faith with wings, and by hoping in the merits of Jesus Christ, he looks at them as his own, and he comes to love them. Hope, Jesus said, provides the soul with a garment of fortitude, almost of iron, in such a way that, with all of their arrows, the enemies cannot wound her. Not only this, but they cannot cause even the slightest disturbance. Everything is tranquility in her, everything is peace. Oh, it is beautiful to see this soul invested with beautiful hope, all cleaving to her beloved, all distrustful of herself, and all trustful in God. She challenges the fiercest enemies, she is queen of her passions, she regulates all of her interior, her inclinations, desires, heartbeats, thoughts, with such mastery that Jesus himself remains enamored, because he sees that this soul operates with such courage and strength. But she draws it from him, and places all her hope in him, so much so, that in seeing this firm hope, Jesus cannot deny anything to this soul. Now, while Jesus would speak about hope, he would withdraw for a little, leaving a light in my intellect. Who can tell what I comprehended about hope? If all the other virtues serve to embellish the soul, but can make us stagger and render us inconstant, hope, instead, renders the soul firm and stable, like those high mountains which cannot be moved a tiny bit. It seems to me that it happens to the soul invested with hope as to certain very high mountains. All of the intemperances of the air cannot do any harm to these mountains, neither snow, nor winds, nor heat can penetrate into them. Whatever thing might be placed at their top, one can be sure of finding there where it was put, even if 100 years should pass. Just so is the soul clothed with hope. Nothing can do harm to her, neither tribulation, nor poverty, nor do all the various accidents of life dismay her for one instant. She says to herself, I can do everything, I can bear everything, suffer everything, hoping in Jesus, who forms the object of all my hopes. Hope renders the soul almost omnipotent, invincible, and it administers to her the final perseverance, so much so, that only then does she cease to hope and to persevere, when she has taken possession of the kingdom of heaven. Then, she lays down hope and plunges all of herself into the immense ocean of divine love. While my soul would dissolve in the immense sea of hope, my beloved Jesus would come back and speak to me about charity, telling me, faith and hope give way to charity, and charity connects all the rest of the other two together, in such a way as to make them one, while they are three. And here is how, O my spouse, the Trinity of the divine persons is concealed in the three theological virtues. Then he continued, if faith makes one believe, and hope makes one hope, charity makes one love. If faith is light and serves as the sight of the soul, and hope, which is the nourishment of faith, provides the souls with courage, peace, perseverance and all the rest, charity, which is the substance of this light and of this nourishment, is like that most sweet and fragrant ointment which, penetrating everywhere, relieves and soothes the pains of life. Charity makes suffering sweet, and makes one reach the point even of desiring it. The soul who possesses charity diffuses fragrance everywhere. Her works, all done out of love, give off a most pleasing odor. And what is this odor? It is the odor of God Himself. The other virtues render the soul solitary and almost unrefined with creatures. Charity, on the other hand, being substance that unites the hearts. But where? In God. Being a most fragrant ointment, charity spreads everywhere and with everyone. Charity makes one suffer the most ruthless torments with joy, and one reaches the point of not being able to be without suffering. And when she sees herself deprived of it, she says to her spouse Jesus, sustain me with the fruits, which is suffering, because I am languishing with love, and where else can I show you my love other than in suffering for you? Charity burns, consumes all other things, even the virtues themselves, and turns them all into itself. In sum, it is like a queen who wants to reign everywhere, and does not want to surrender to anyone. Who can tell what remained after this speaking of Jesus? I will just say that such yearning for suffering ignited within me, and not just yearning, but I feel as though an infusion in me, like something natural, such that I believe that the greatest disgrace is not to suffer. After this, on that morning, in order to dispose my heart more, Jesus spoke about the annihilation of myself. He also spoke of the immense desire which I was to excite within me in order to dispose myself to receive that grace. He told me that desire makes up for the lacks and imperfections that may be in the soul. It is like a mantle that covers everything. But this was not a simple speaking, it was an infusion in me of that which he was saying. While my soul was exciting itself with ardent yearnings for receiving the grace that Jesus himself wanted to give me, Jesus came back and transported me outside of myself, up to paradise. And there, in the presence of the Most Holy Trinity and of all the celestial court, he renewed the marriage. Jesus put out the ring adorned with 3 precious stones, white, red and green, and he gave it to the Father, who blessed it and gave it back to the Son again. The Holy Spirit took my right hand and Jesus placed the ring on my ring finger. Then I was admitted to the kiss of all the 3 divine persons, and each of them blessed me. Who can tell my confusion when I found myself before the Most Holy Trinity? I will just say that as soon as I found myself in their presence, I fell flat to the ground, and I would have remained there if it wasn't for Jesus, who encouraged me to go into their presence, so much was the light, the sanctity of God. I am only saying this, the other things I will leave out, because I remember them confusedly. After this, I remember that a few days passed and I received communion. I lost consciousness, and I saw, present before me, the Most Holy Trinity whom I had seen in heaven. I immediately prostrated myself at their presence, I adored them, I confessed my nothingness. I remember that I felt so plunged within myself that I did not dare to utter a single word, when a voice came from their midst and said, "Do not fear, pluck up courage, we have come to confirm you as our own, and to take possession of your heart." While this voice was saying this, I saw that the Most Holy Trinity descended into my heart and took possession of it, and there, they formed their dwelling. Who can tell the change that occurred in me? I felt divinized, it was no longer I who lived, but they were living in me. It seemed to me that my body was like a residence, and that the living God was residing in it, because I could feel, sensibly, their real presence in my interior. I could hear their voice clearly, coming from within my interior and resounding at the ears of my body. It happened precisely as when there are people speaking inside a room, and their voices can be heard, clearly and distinctly, also outside. From that moment on, I no longer had the need to go in search of him somewhere else in order to find him, but I could find him there, inside my heart. And when sometimes he would hide and I would go in search of Jesus, wandering around heaven and earth, searching for my highest and only good, while I would be in the heat of my tears, in the intensity of my yearnings, amid unutterable pains for having lost him, Jesus would come out from within my interior and say to me, "I am here with you, do not look for me elsewhere." Between the surprise and the contentment at having found him, I would say to him, "My Jesus, how is it? For the entire morning you made me go around and around in order to find you, and you are here? You could at least tell me, so I would not have become so worked up. My sweet good, my dear life, take a look at how tired I am, I feel I have no more strengths, I feel faint, oh please. Sustain me in your arms for I feel I am dying." And so Jesus would take me in his arms and would make me rest, and while resting, I would feel my strengths being restored. Other times, in this hiding of Jesus and my going around in search for him, when he would make himself felt inside of me and then come out from within me, I would find not Jesus alone, but all 3 divine persons, now in the form of 3 children, gracious and immensely beautiful, now with one single body and 3 distinct heads, but resembling each other, all 3 of them attractive. Who can tell my contentment? Especially when I would see the 3 children, whom I would hold, all 3 of them, in my arms. I would kiss now one, now another, and receive their kisses, now one would lean on my shoulder, another on the other shoulder, and another would remain in front of me. And while delighting in them, I would go about looking at them and, to my amazement, from 3 I would find one,